Major funding for these programs is made possible by grants from Chase Commercial Term Lending and Capital One Bank, New York Community Bank, the Witkoff Group, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Jean Tomasi and Webster, Greenberg Traurig, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company. Additional funding is provided by grants from AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Colliers International NYC, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Friedman, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, Hap Investment Developers, Herrick Feinstein, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Chairman USRealty.com, John Katsimides, Red Apple Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Matone Group, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, New Banks, People's United Bank, SJP Properties, Sterling & Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the CUNY TV Foundation, the Continuum Company, Urban American, and these friends.
Wine, a product that everyone is drinking. According to my guests, there's more wine being consumed in the U.S. than in France. So today, with the efforts of my friend Charles, we have assembled this group of leaders from the wine industry, from the North Fork, an area that's been growing and developing, to provide their insight on the state of the market. My guests, they include Michael Lynn, who is the owner of Bedell Cellars Quarry Creek Vineyards, Russell Hearn, who is the winemaker, co-owner of Tajari Vineyards, Peter Carroll, who is the co-owner of Lens, and last but not least, the man who assembled this group together, my friend Charles Massoud, who is the proprietor of Pominock Vineyards. So now, let's go in order. The first person who entered the wine business in the North Fork was?
Let's see, probably I'm the older one around.
So about 15 years.
Right,
Peter was already here.
Right, Peter was like 1988?
84.
84.
We started in 1983. We celebrated 30 years last summer.
So we have the kid over here.
1990?
No.
1990.
So you're 1990. So how has the region, how has the products evolved that people today are really looking and saying, New York, North Fork wines are a product that I want?
Well, I think each of us can speak to that, but I think what's gone on is first of all, the understanding on the part of the owners and the winemakers and the vineyard managers of the nature of our region and maximizing the value of the kind of fruit we can develop and the kind of wines we can make. We've also attracted terrific winemaking talent to the region. And as a result, over the course of a region which has developed over 30 years, really, we're really in our early adulthood, but barely out of being a teenager, but something very compelling is going on in the region right now.
Now, speaking of that, each one of you has been kind enough to bring me a bottle, some of it which we would drink. Tell me about your product.
Sure. This is our Musée wine. Musée is what we call a Bordeaux blend. It's a blend of several varietals. It's a red wine. It's a blend of Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Petit Verdot, which is the very typical Bordeaux blend, but added to that is a hint of Syrah, which gives it a tiny bit of spiciness. And it's an elegant wine rated, depending upon who the raters are, between 91 and 93 points.
We'll get to the point on
And-
these raters over here.
Yeah.
I mean,
But at any rate, it's a highly rated wine, which we're proud of, and it's a delicious wine.
which we're going to taste. Russell, tell me what you have.
Tajara. Tajara, we're a small vineyard in Mattatuck. We grow four Bordeaux varieties: Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Petit Verdot also. And this wine, this is our reserve. It's made up of all four varieties in varying degrees.
You also take grapes from upstate New York in some of the production, not on this one.
Not on this one. This is an estate-grown production. And then my wife and I have a second brand we call Suru, which is a blend, a combination of grapes grown on Long Island as well as from the Finger Lakes, depending on which variety grows best in which region.
And Peter, what do you have over here?
What did I bring? Well, first of all, thanks for having us back on the show. This is a sparkling wine. A lot of people would call it a champagne, but of course the French don't like that.
You know, this is a very interesting thing. There are wine snobs, and this weekend we had some friends over, and he brought over a sparkling, and he always brings champagne. I said, what happened? You've gone down? I mean, you know, but I've had that. The quality is excellent. You can't compare, but because the fact that champagne can only be called champagne from France, correct?
If it's produced in the Epernay region, right? But this is chemically, I suppose you'd say, identical. The process is the same. So this particular sparkling wine is made from the Pinot Noir grape, which looks like a red grape, but when you squeeze the juice, it's actually essentially white. So unlike the blends that Russell and Michael brought, this is a single grape variety.
And you, proprietor?
I want to repeat what Peter said. It's nice that you invited us back. Thank you. This is a bottle of Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc is a grape which grows in the Loire Valley, and it really has found a home on Long Island. This is the closest thing we have to a cult wine. This wine, when we release it, we have to allocate it because by June, July, it's sold out. It goes.
So can't you make more?
Well, we are gonna. We started.
I mean, let's be realistic. The world of supply and demand. You know.
Very good question, because we started with 2 acres. We're up to 13 acres. And as I told you before the show, we're purchasing a piece of property. Next year, we're going to plant 5 more acres of Chenin Blanc. And if the demand continues, we probably will plant it all in Chenin
So
Blanc.
here's the question: how do you promote? You know, Michael was saying that this has a 91, 93 points over there. How is the promotion of what we all know here? You're biased, but I believe in it also. We know that North Fork wines have come of age, okay? And you have quality wines, because there are certain North Fork wines which are a different category, okay? They're more for the mass producing, the mass.
But that's true of every region. in
It's the same
fairness.
thing.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
it's the same thing anywhere else. But how do you get people to want to enjoy this or this wine over here?
Michael, one
We
expression,
are going to taste some. You know.
one expression you will hear from all of us is our wines are food friendly, which means you want to consume them with dinner. And for that reason, they have become very popular in New York restaurants. Sommeliers, they feature them because they know they have a winner. And so that's what's helping us. It's word of mouth, and the wine speaks for itself.
Now, where are we also with the price point today on wines?
Well,
I think that has an effect also.
Yeah, it
on
does,
this.
but it depends. I think each of us has an array of price points that will include, if you will, entry-level wines from a price point of view, and yet wines that are crafted to be the very best wines in the world, which could not be made for a price point that was entry-level. So I think each of us has an array of wines that satisfy a different price point.
Now, how important, you know, are the, you know, one of the nice things, especially, you know, of taking 25 and going to the North Fork, it's less traffic than going to the East Hampton or Montauk.
The other
is-
fork.
Okay, the other part of the place, which we don't talk about. But, you know, people, you know, all of you have these wine tasting facilities, okay? I mean, you have your famous oysters on Saturday in addition to your wine. Many of you have parties over there. And in many cases, sometimes you get a little upset because these bachelorette parties or the bachelorette parties, you know, could take over the consumption. How important are the wine tasting rooms today since the world has evolved better today for acceptance?
They're hugely important. I'll come back to the bachelorette parties briefly, but sales that we make through the tasting room, through visitors to the tasting room and through wine clubs are extraordinarily important to the economics of the winery. So the fact that over the last several years, the traffic has increased, you know, the visitorship, if that's a word, and purchases by those visitors have gone up a lot is extremely important. Now, the side effect is things get busier. You start getting complaints at certain locations about noise, about activities that go on in the vineyards sometimes. And you get the bachelorette parties. So
You do have to remember on, you know, if you, Noah with a vineyard, you know,
yeah.
he drank.
But I think what people deal with the party buses differently. Some people just ban them. At Lens, we basically say you can come, but you have to come before noon. And so if they come before noon, then they haven't been drinking.
And they have to have an appointment.
Yeah, they have to.
Now, what about you,
agree.
I think the larger quantity of wine savvy, wine interested people, either wanting to learn more about it or expanding their knowledge. Unfortunately, you always get the little bit of negative gets more attention than the positive. So I think from a quantity, tasting rooms are very important. Just this week, actually, I got an email and spoke with the gentleman. He had 3 wine bars in New York City and had been out the weekend before, tasted the wine and wanted to know how to find them. Really enjoyed the wines and wanted to find who we distribute through. And so apart from even a retail sale, that was hopefully a 3 wine bar wholesale sale.
Now that brings up a point. How much of your business are from what we'd call, and I'd like people to understand, the wine clubs, let's say, what they are, and through the mail, you know, or through UPS or so on, to consumers, and how much it comes from the liquor store and wine stores?
You know, it's an evolving picture. I'll give you an example. If you go back 5 years, perhaps 60-65% of our sales were in the tasting room. The others were between stores and restaurants. Today, it's a lower. I thought for a while that retail sales will go up and we'll get out of the wholesale business, but the wholesale business has taken off. And today it's a smaller number, actually. We're almost 50-50, but they both are increasing in size. So everything is going up, and yet the proportion is going more towards wholesale. Now, the online business, the wine club business is growing.
What is the wine clubs?
Well, at Bedell, we've made a lot of effort to develop our wine club. We have over 1,000 active wine club members at this point. And the wine club enables interested consumers who like the brand, already know the brand, and who want to have a priority of some kind related to the brand, either in terms of releases that may be exclusive to our wine club, or releases that are priced for our wine club, or earlier releases because of our wine club. And those are the very reliable base, in a way, of the business. They're reliable both because they're already committed consumers. They're probably very knowledgeable.
So they're
wine
also repeat customers.
Exactly. And most of them, many of them, developed out of the tasting room. So the tasting room and the wine club really go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
And are very significant, and for a winery owner, very important, because essentially you sell that wine at retail.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not
Some
wholesale.
of your most loyal customers.
Yeah.
They're influencers. They're proud to show off the wines to their friends and hopefully introduce more people to the wine club. So they're loyal, very, very.
Now, is there a charge to be a member of a wine club?
I think everybody
There's a
varies.
commitment.
I mean,
It's
a
not
commitment.
so much a charge as it is a commitment.
It's a
commitment
discount,
to
actually.
buy for, in our case, for a period of a year, 4 times a year.
Right.
You know, backed by a credit card and with a certain commitment as to what that will be each quarter.
Right. As a matter of fact, in most cases, they get a break because of that commitment.
Yes, exactly.
but the fortunate situation that Michael just said is that you're selling this at retail and you're not going to the distributor where, you know.
Right.
And not to discount that, because I think all of us think
No,
that
no,
the
no, no,
distributor
no,
does
no, yeah,
matter.
the distributor is very important because the distributor in many cases is the entree into the wine and spirit stores and also to the restaurants.
And geographically, you can get out of your, specific locality.
But you now bring up an interesting situation. We're talking about the people in New York understanding that the wine has come of age in the North Fork. How about around the country? How many of the people from around the country have learned about the North Fork wines?
Well, I think it's more and more so. I mean, one of the things that you have to decide as an owner of a winery, I mean, I think all of us would feel that way. It would not be hard for any of us to be in any market in America. Let's just start with America, if we wanted to. But unless you have feet on the ground selling your brand, not just the distributors selling your brand, there's no particular reason to do that, since most of us, I think all of us, sell our output in any event.
Yeah.
So you sell it in places where you can maximize the value of it, both in terms of the, selling a sufficient quantity in any particular locality. I mean, we're in Washington, D.C. We're all through New England. We're obviously in the tri-state area. I think many of us are like that.
Right.
We're in Chicago. But it's kind of selective where we can support the wine.
You know the expression, we pick the low-hanging fruit?
Yes.
It's much easier to sell in our backyard than it is to sell in Nebraska. And therefore, being small as we are, we don't make enough wine to supply our local market. I'll give you an example. If you take a radius from Times Square to Montauk and spin it around, in that geography there are 28 million people. Our total production on Long Island is about 2 million bottles. We don't have enough wine to even sell 10% of them, 1 bottle per year. So we don't have to try very hard to move all of our production.
Here's a question. People are going to watch the show. People watch it on TV and also on the internet. Where in the metropolitan area, who are the...
This is very nice, Mike.
Thank you.
That's what we're trying to. Who are the people, who are the main liquor store or wine stores who are selling the large number? I remember, there was this place on 3rd Avenue that had a large, like 20th
Thomas
Street.
McAdams.
Thomas McAdams.
Yes. He continues. He made a very smart move. He decided to carry all of Long Island wines, and therefore anybody that wants to buy wine in the city,
Your wine.
everybody knows to tell them to go to McAdams, because you don't have to even look in your database where you sold your wine, because chances are Thomas McAdams has the wine.
And who besides him?
Well, Astor Place is an enormous supporter of Long Island wines and has been
Astor
very
Place,
good.
Union
to Fidelity.
Square,
Union Square. yeah.
Sherry Lehman.
But the wines are distributed very broadly through the wine shops and in the 5 boroughs and in Nassau County and in Suffolk County. So I don't think any of us are concerned that we're not reaching the consumer through a wine shop. I think we are.
Yeah.
So how do we take this business to the next step? Okay, you're in the business 15 years. Let's say you're in the business 30 years. You're in the business 31 years. You're in the business 25 years. And it's evolving, okay? I mean, we have a wonderful wine here. You have all wonderful wines that you brought over here, and not the wine, the sparkling.
Yeah.
How do you get the message? Is it the Facebook? Is it the Twitter? Is it the social media? Is it the other areas? How is that going to, because I've seen it in spirits. I've seen the ads on TV and other things for Avion, or, the spirit product. I haven't seen the wine ads.
Well, as Charles said, our output in the region is, by comparison to other regions, modest. And as a result, you can sell your inventory either through your tasting room, through your wine club, through the wholesale sales you do on a normal basis through restaurants and wine shops. without an enormous advertising budget. It happens to be the nature of where we are. Many of us, it's not, but many of us have, all of us probably, have sites for our wineries, have Facebook pages,
Indeed.
have wine bloggers who are on an ongoing basis following us and putting out that message. And that's the dramatic way we reach our customer, I think.
But in a similar manner,
The influences.
Yeah.
in a similar manner, Yelp and some of these others have hurt a number of restaurants. I haven't, I haven't searched it in the subject of wine. But when you have a new release, there is Twitter, and that and if you're talking about people who come to the tasting room and they sign up, you're building your network of
And goodwill,
consumers
sure.
and goodwill. And I think
It's interesting because in our case, since our children, as you know, are all involved in our business, we have a split. So our sons are into all this social media, Facebook, Twitter, and all that. I can't even spell Twitter.
please, I have everything. I use okay.
But in my case, the people that we started with, I'm not saying they're our customer versus our sons have a different customer set. The people that we interact with from our customer sets, they're more like us. They're not into social media, and they're just as important because they tend.
But it's very interesting. If you take the studies, and I've done a lot of this business, there are people over the age of 50 years of age who are very active in social media more and more. Okay,
That's true.
That they are a lot of alumni associations and people are reaching out. It's a means of communicating, and I do believe social media helps. Okay,
I'm not minimizing it. I'm saying that
especially for a man who worked for IBM.
the point is that you hit all of them.
Yes.
You can't focus on one versus the other. All of them are important conduits to get to your clients at the end of the day. So whichever method you use to get to them, the message has to get to them eventually.
And to Michael's point also, all of us our productions are small. So large advertising budgets aren't possible, but aren't necessarily the best way to get to our customers or our future customers.
I mean, I think the advertising in essence is, the reviews of the Wine Spectator and other publications, Parker and all those situations help, and when you walk into a wine or spirit store and they have, as written up over there, that PR.
When, a year ago when, fortunately, our Bedell's Merlot was chosen to be the wine served at the inaugural luncheon.
And you were also at Gracie Mansion, I remember.
That's true, but I'm going to talk specifically about that inaugural luncheon because what happened was quite dramatic and evidence of what can happen from social media and the kind of publicity you get that you don't pay for, where that was featured everywhere. I mean, there were pictures of Obama drinking the wine. The bottles were on the table all through the luncheon. It was telecast all over the world. And the amount of business we did within about 4 days after that announcement and then the luncheon. First of all, it sold out that Merlot immediately. We early released the next year's Merlot because the demand was so great. So there are things that you don't actually control yourself because we certainly didn't control that, but which represent the kind of promotion and publicity that you don't literally pay for, but has a dramatic effect.
Haven't you always found that those things always hit with a wine that you're just about to sell out of?
Yes.
You have your products. When do you come up with a new product? When do you come out, with a blend? When do you come out with how do you decide to come out with that new product?
I think that's a very personal answer for all of us. And not that we vary tremendously, but you either make wines that you like and hopefully try to find the audience for those wines. And I think if that's the case, normally you're making wines that grow best in an area. So all the varieties that we're growing, there's hundreds of varieties grown in the world. We have a relatively small focus of varieties that do well here. So I think on that level, then it's just different interpretations of the same.
And we've always had a program of blending wines because our winemaker believes strongly in that. But since we only make wines from the fruit that we generate from our own properties, there's a limited amount of those properties. But we've been replanting on a regular basis. And so about 9 years ago, we planted a certain amount of acreage of Malbec, which we had never had before. We're now releasing a varietal Malbec. In addition to blending it, we planted Syrah, which we had not had, and we're now releasing a Syrah. We planted 5 years ago a Spanish wine, which we were assured would grow in our region, which it turned out it did, called Albarino, which is a wine I happen to have liked. And we've gotten our first fruit from the 2013 vintage and have used it in a blend. So that's a program that each winery will do individually, based on the nature of the wines they want to make.
Now will you produce a wine because of a age demographic? That a certain demographic likes a certain type of wine? Or?
I don't think we will. I don't know.
No, I'm just,
Yeah.
just
No.
No.
I think what Russell said is generally you kind of make the wines. I mean, most of us came into this at a point where the vines that were planted were the vines that were planted, right? So you do the best you can with what's already planted.
he had
Some Chardonnay,
potatoes
some
originally
Merlot.
at his place, so he wouldn't.
Oh, we all did. Everybody.
He tried making wine from it, but it didn't work out very well.
He tried to make wine when he was in Kuwait out of grape juice, and that was his real
That's
stuff.
for vodka. We'll leave that to vodka.
Listen, I think we are all torn between two imperatives in winemaking, because you can't just plant a vine and the next thing you're making wine of it. It takes 4 or 5 years. On the one hand, you have the younger consumers. They come in, they ask the same question: what's new? You can't have what's new every year. And on the other hand, you're torn by, to make better wines, I have to increase my focus on what I'm doing, which means less varieties. But to satisfy the curiosity, you need more varieties. Plus, there is what we like.
You have a limited production. You have a certain quality, and you're not Gallo. Okay, you're not into that type of product.
Our area is very defined, obviously by two large bodies of water. So we only have a certain volume of acreage that can ever be planted. I think there was a study done by Cornell years ago that they said around 11,000 potential acres for vine. So we're 3,000+ acres at this stage. So we could triple in size, but we'll never be a mass wine region. So we have to focus, and we can never compete on price also. We can only compete on quality. So that's what we has to be our focus.
Exactly.
And it's very analogous to what has gone on. It's kind of ironic in a way with the great California Cabernets, whether it's Family Cellars or Screaming Eagle or Ann Colgan, which are properties that are not large. They are definitely limited in production. And what happened was the demand for particularly their very best wines became so strong that the prices could go up to a level that the businesses are beyond vital. And that's the model which candidly exists for us if we can make wines of that quality and create that demand. I believe that.
Since we're going to air in the summer, I hope that my viewers take the initiative and travel out to the North Fork and go to all of your places and to enjoy the finest wines I consider in the country. And I promise to have you back and maybe more members to talk about the fabulous wines of the North Fork. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Mike.
So I'd like to thank Michael, Russell, Peter, and needless to say, Charles. And I'll see you next week.